What's going on, everybody? Today I'm going to be briefly going over how to install the Dynojet launch control module in a Canam Maverick X3 Turbo. Mine's a 2023 model year. The install will really be the same for any model year. So I'll flip this camera around and briefly show you what the hookups look like, and then we'll hook it up to the laptop and I'll show you more of the configuration settings. So this here is what the module looks like. It's a completely pre-wired unit minus these three trigger wires that go to the switch. So basically I already have mine installed for the most part. You pretty much just take your passenger seat out because you need to gain access to the panel to run your wires. On the harness there's an eyelet, and you're just going to hook it to the negative post of the battery. And aside from that, the rest of the connectors are just basically plugged into the coils. You unplug the factory harness to the coil, and then you plug that into the Dynojet, and then there is another connector off the Dynojet that loops back to the stock harness. So you're going to do that for all three of the coils, and I'll flip around the back of the machine and show you the connector for the crank sensor. That's the only other connector you need to plug in. So we'll flip around the back and I'll show you guys that. So we're around to the back side of the machine now. It's going to be kind of hard for me to show you guys, but I'll reach my arm in here. This here, let me see if I can get a better shot. This guy here is from the crank sensor. You're going to unplug this connector, which is going to be plugged in to the harness on the machine side, and you're basically just going to plug the Dynojet connector into this, and the other end tees back into the factory harness. It's all plug and play, no splicing, no wiring. So you've got the crank sensor and your three coil packs, and that's pretty much all you need to hook up, aside from the eyelet that goes to the negative terminal of the battery. So we'll pop back into the cab, I'll go over the switch, and then we'll hook it up to the laptop, and I'll go over some of the software with you guys. So this guy here is the actual switch that activates the launch control. It comes in the box with the launch control module. It's not hooked up to anything, but it's the switch already hooked up to the harness. So what I did in my machine was, in the instructions, this is actually the location they show, for example, where they have their switch. You could also put it on the grab handle as well. It's really personal preference. I mean, in fact, if you didn't like this style switch and you wanted more of a dash mounted switch, you could very easily wire the other side of this up to more of a rocker switch style, which some of the other companies will actually already do that for you. But from Dynojet, if you order the kit with the switch, this is the switch you will get, which it works just fine. It does its job. A lot of people just don't like that it's not mounted actually into the dash, but in these X3s you don't have a ton of switch space, so if you've already got a lot of accessories, this might actually be a better option for you anyways. And for me, after using it in this location, it's actually in a pretty good spot. So what I did was I popped the corner of this panel out, and well, I had my passenger seat out, and I had this lower plastic tray out as well. I basically, from the LCM, where you hook the wires up that go to the switch. I just ran it and zip tied it on the back side of this cover along the factory harness, and I brought it up to about here, and I went underneath the shifter linkage and shifter gate, essentially over to the driver's side, and I zip tied it all up underneath there so it wouldn't get caught in anything. And I just snuck it out this corner here, and I just ran it right up to this pillar, and I used the Velcro strap that they give you in the package as well. It gets the job done. Might not be the cleanest install, but again, it does get the job done. So once you get your switch routed and run and put wherever you'd like, the other end of it that tees into the actual launch control module, the instructions are very straightforward, that they give you in the box, and also that you can find online. But essentially it just goes red, black, red, and you start closest to where the harness comes out. If you look real close, there are more holes. My camera will focus. But red, black, red, does not matter which red goes first as long as black's in the middle. And on the back side, there's just little flat blade set screws that just pinch down on the wires. Just make sure those are tight. And once you get those buttoned up, your switch routed, your harness all tucked away, they give you Velcro, and in the instructions they just show it and have you put this Velcroed right above the battery. There's a nice little flat spot there. The reason why it's on Velcro is because we're going to need this port opened up to be able to plug in the cable to connect to the computer to make our changes. So with it being on Velcro, anytime you need to make a change, you just pull the Velcro away, and then you have, I just left myself enough slack that with the seat forward I could just easily access it to plug my cables in. So once you get all your connections buttoned up and routed how you'd like, really the next step is just hooking it up to the laptop and using the C3 tuning software to actually activate and make changes to the launch control itself. So then when you hit the switch, it actually does something. So I'll get you guys set up here. I'll get this hooked up to the computer, and I'll just briefly run through what I've learned setting mine up, and hopefully it helps some of you guys who are doing this to your own machines. Alright, so once you get your launch control all hooked up wiring wise, you're gonna take this USB cable that they supply in the package and plug it into your laptop, and the other end is gonna plug in right to the launch control module. Once you get that hooked up, you're gonna go ahead and open your C3 tuning software, and it's going to communicate with the device, and once it does, it's going to look like this. So over here on the left, you're going to see map position 1 and map position 2. Map position 2 is when the switch for the launch control is actually depressed. So we're going to go ahead and go after 2, and we're going to double click on TPS percent ignition adjust in degrees, and it is going to bring up your table here. This top bank is going to be the throttle position in terms of percentage. So 100% is going to be wide open to the floor. 0 is going to be no throttle input, just machine idling. And over here on the left hand side, you're going to have the engine RPM. Now, depending on the clutch kit and the primary spring in your machine is going to determine what your launch control parameters are going to actually be set to. So in my machine, it is pretty stock in terms of clutching. I have RR weights that I've shaved 8 grams off a weight, so I'm about 90 grams per weight, and I'm running 2800 engagement primary spring. So I can kind of go through and at least show you how to make changes. yours might look a little different than mine depending on how your machine's set up, but making adjustments and changes, I can just walk through and at least show you how to do that. So over here on the left hand side, you're going to see configure with a wrench. Go ahead, double click that. Click on, you're looking at feature, enables, and input selections, and we are after launch control. So double click launch control. It's going to bring up this screen here. Obviously you're going to want this to say enabled, so the launch is enabled. Now launch RPM, this is what you're going to want to set up first. My spring engages about 2800, so I found that 2500, 2550 for the launch RPM is right on the teetering edge of belt engagement when you're actually in the two-step launch control. So I have mine set to 2550. I could also do 2500, but 2550 is just right on that teetering edge. It allows me to build a little bit more boost. So go ahead and set that to whatever your machine calls for. I wouldn't go any lower than 2200. I think that's the minimum for this launch control device. So from 2200 all the way up to whatever your machine's set up for, go ahead and make the change to your desired RPM. Once you make the change, you're going to want to go ahead and send it to the device. I usually click it 2 or 3 times just to make sure it actually did send to the launch control module. And then once that's done, your timer is the amount of seconds of delay after the launch control button is depressed that you wait before the launch control mode is actually active. 3 is pretty standard. The use timer to arm, that just means whatever your second delay is to actually arm the launch control. If this is set to yes, then that means that it has to wait that amount of time before it will actually be active. So for instance, mine says 3 seconds here, but it says use timer to arm and I have no. What that means is I don't have any delay. Anytime that button is depressed, my launch control is active. That's all going to be personal preference. If you also trail ride your car, I'd highly recommend turning the timer to arm to yes and then leaving that at least 3 seconds. So if the button is accidentally bumped, it's not immediately going to be put into launch mode. But for what I'm doing, I have mine set to no. I just don't like the delay. So once you get those settings done, you're going to go ahead and go back to your ignition adjustment. And when I got my device brand new from Dynojet, mine was zeros across the board. There was nothing set up whatsoever. So my machine is set at 2550 RPM for launch. So right at about 2500 is when the launch, when your 100% throttle is actually going to be active. What I've been playing around with on mine is having the launch come in with fewer degrees of timing retard at a lower RPM. So if I'm 10, 20, whatever, just barely in the throttle, but I'm on the launch control switch at 1750 RPM, it's going to be pulling 15 degrees of timing. And then, 2000, I have it set to 30, 2250 to 35, and then right at my peak launch, it's still 35, and I just set the bank above it as well, just in case the RPM spikes. This device allows you to go all the way up to negative 40 for the timing adjustment. Obviously, the more timing you pull, the more boost that you'll make. But just be very mindful that not every machine's the same, and obviously when you're playing real close to the limit, things can go bad real quick. But just in my trials, this is kind of what I've set up here, and it seems to work pretty good for my machine. I'm right at about 5-ish pounds of boost when I am fully staged in the launch control. If you want to make a change, you can just click on the box and just drag all the way across, or if you want them all the same, go all the way down. And once they're highlighted, you'll just, like that, just go ahead and make your change on the keyboard. And then you're going to go back up to where this send button is, and you're going to click that 2 or 3 times to send your changes to the device. And once the changes have been sent, you can go ahead and start your machine, warm it up, and then that's when you can actually use the switch and try out your changes. So I'll go ahead and give you guys a little demo of once you get your timing table kind of squared away and sent to the device, when you start the machine, kind of what happens, and I'll pick you guys up from there. Alright, so now that we're sitting in the machine, step one would be make sure that the driver's seat belt is buckled, because if it's not, it'll do all sorts of crazy things and you're going to think that your launch control isn't working right. But just make sure the seat belt's buckled before you start monkeying around with it and get all worried that something's not right. So when your seat belt's buckled, you've got all of your parameters and changes sent to the device. You're just going to go ahead and start your machine. I have my switch mounted here. I'll just show you guys at 2550 on the RPM for the launch with 35 degrees timing retarded. I'll just give you guys kind of the sound of what it's like, and we'll go from there. So yeah, guys, that's a wrap on the launch control. Did a very brief overview of the installation. I pretty much just followed the Dynojet instructions to a T. They're pretty good instructions. The only thing that's kind of your choice is where you want the switch mounted, or what kind of switch you want to use. The installation is super easy. Once that's done, really all is left is kind of what we walked through with the computer, just setting everything up. I just figured it all out on my own, kind of trial and error. I didn't really see any other videos out there that were extremely helpful. But yeah, it's not that difficult. You'll probably figure it out. Just be mindful. Don't go super crazy. Don't try to blow anything up. I mean, obviously, launch controls can be dangerous. You know, if you're not doing drag racing, it's probably something you don't need. I only did this to mine because I have a dirt drag event coming up, and I figured if I could help alleviate the turbo lag, why not? I also wanted to I like monkeying around with stuff, just kind of making my car my own. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing it. So anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned something from this video. If you have any questions or if I missed something, just go ahead and leave a comment down below. I know this video is kind of all over the place. Maybe down the road I'll revisit it if I get enough comments with questions. But yeah, thanks again for watching. Make sure to like the video, interact with the video. I'm pretty much open to make any videos. Maybe down the road I'll get a full clutch kit going for this rig. Maybe a couple other things. But yeah, till next time, thank you.